Alrighty, so Sweden and Finland both have decided that they want to join NATO. It says Finland's government said Sunday it intends to join NATO, ditching decades of neutrality and ignoring Russian threats of possible retaliation. Now, I don't know what type of retaliation Russia's talking about. Hopefully, they're not talking about another invasion, because that would be quite unwise. Opening another front in another country after you've already had a very, very difficult time taking over one country, I don't see that happening. Let's see. Russian threats of possible retaliation, attempts to strengthen security. Decision was announced by the press conference by President Sauli Niinisto. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce that. And Prime Minister Sanna Marin, who said move was ratified. Okay, so this whole situation is escalating. It's escalating because Finland and this is a big deal because Finland and Sweden have both been neutral since World War II. And where does it say? Yeah, well, Finland was invaded during World War II by the Soviet Union, which there was a failed invasion also. So history potentially repeating itself. Russia, I would advise you not to try to invade Finland again. So let's see here. There's a map down here I want to show everybody. Now, whether they would be involved, like let into NATO, is another thing, because you got Turkey. Turkey is having reservations because apparently Turkey's a mediator between Russia and NATO. So you gotta kind of take into account everybody's demands, and when you're in that middle position, you gotta negotiate. So look at this map. This is a map of NATO countries. Okay, now these lighter shaded countries are the countries that joined NATO before 1991, which was the fall of the Soviet Union, and the countries that joined after 1991. Now these countries that joined after 1991 are former Soviet republics, and that there was never a real agreement or like a written deal back in the early 90s, which was under George H.W. Bush, to not expand NATO. Because, when we have different presidents, different, administrations, foreign policy changes with those administrations. There's overlapping foreign policy that stays the same, but in many cases, a lot of that foreign policy will change as time goes on. So you could have one president that will say, hey, we're not going to do that. And the next one will be like, hey, we're going to expand. So under H.W. Bush, there was an agreement almost to not expand NATO. Like, we're not going to expand. The Soviet Union collapsed. Russia's in a weak position. We're just going to leave it at that. After that, we let in all these other countries. In the years following that, we've let in all these other countries into NATO. Now, the problem with that is that you see these countries, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, they are right on the border of Russia. Now, these countries were supposed to be like a buffer zone between the West and the East. So, it was supposed to be like a middle buffer zone to kind of keep potential, military weapons and operations and anything off of the Russian border. They didn't want any missiles, any nuclear weapons, anything anywhere near their border to where they would be in a disadvantage in a first strike situation. So, Russia is basically cornered and boxed in. Now you see Ukraine here. This is where the war is taking place in Ukraine, as everybody knows. Ukraine, if Ukraine had joined NATO, that would have been it. Russia would have been completely boxed in at that point, like all the way boxed in. But now you have Sweden and Finland who want to join NATO. And Finland, you can see, is right on Russia's border as well. That is why Russia really does not want Finland to join, because that puts them at another disadvantage. And you would have Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland. All these countries would have surrounded Russia at this point. And Ukraine is just a mess of a situation. Part of the country's in ruin. The economy's messed up, and Ukraine will be probably never be. It'll be years before Ukraine would ever be the same again, if it ever gets to be rebuilt. So you have Russia being surrounded like that. When you box somebody into a situation, that's when they can act sort of irrational. So you see, when Putin decided to invade Ukraine, it did not go as planned, because now the invasion is all sorts of jacked up, and it did was galvanize all these countries right here. Like, it did not split up. It did not cause a bunch of division within NATO. There were reservations and, of course, arguments between the leaders of the countries of NATO. But what it did was it ended up making Europe, it put Europe on a war footing. It galvanized all these countries. And now you have more countries wanting to join as a result. So it had the opposite effect. And if you have countries who are afraid or potentially afraid for their country's security, then they will start making moves like this. Now you have them trying to join because they're a little bit nervous. They don't want to be invaded. And then you're threatening them at the same time. Russia is in a situation to where it can't. It's running out of leverage because the world is, for the most part, against Russia at this moment. So there are countries that are on Russia's side and allied with Russia, like Belarus and others. But at this point, like, Russia's running out of leverage. The main biggest leverage that Russia or any other country has is nuclear weapons. The potential for a hot conflict. That is the biggest reason that we haven't really entered a hot war or a potentially, broader war, is because of the threat of nuclear weapons. As crazy as our leaders may be, they know at the end of the day that mutually assured destruction is real. Like, if we go into a hot war, we would all die. Most of us would die because of a nuclear strike situation, global nuclear conflict. And I think some leaders may be cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs in the head, but some of them have a high self-preservation complex, high enough to want to save themselves and, potentially people in the country, that they would not like that to happen. Because even if they go off into a bunker somewhere underground, they don't have any people to lead anymore. They might have a few people that they brought under there with them, but if the world is destroyed, you got nobody to lead. You got nothing left. So there would be no point in living in a world like that, especially people who love to, dominate and power and have power over people. If there's no people to have power over, then there's no point. So I think that mutually assured destruction may hold us off from that potential conflict, but the more and more moves that get made like this, with Finland and Sweden wanting to join NATO now, the higher the possibility of us potentially entering a bigger conflict becomes. But I don't think that will happen. I pray to God that does not happen. But yeah, this is big news, big deal. The neutrality status of Finland and Sweden is over at this point. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about this situation. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, like, comment, subscribe, like, whatever do, just do it. It's your boy Red X Black, and I'm out. Peace.